I would just like to say hello to everyone. It is my pleasure to be here in partnership with Women in Cloud, working to really fight for gender equity everywhere, right? It's like I was thinking about it this morning, and we've all been circulating around these conferences for several years now. I mean, Coco, you and I have been on the speaker circuit for the past 3 years, talking about trying to push for women to be in leadership positions in the executive suite, on corporate boards, and with Chaitra for economic access and for more women entrepreneurship. And it seems like, it's just year after year, we're still talking about the same things. And, I just want to say that we mustn't give up hope. We have to still keep fighting to make the future better for the next generation. And so here we all are. I see lots of people putting things in the chat about, the collective power of all of these communities. And I just feel overwhelmed with how all of the organizations, Athena Alliance and Women in Cloud and the WIC Network and others, and all these companies, all of your companies coming together, to band together and to make these changes. And so today we're here in this panel session to speak specifically about what we can all do to try to overcome the challenges that women face rising up into more leadership and executive positions. And, you can see here that I'm sure if you look at the list of some of the challenges that are out there, you may be able to relate to one or two of them. We have women are held to higher standards than their male counterparts. The research today still shows that women feel they have to work harder and they have to achieve more to get the same recognition as men for doing less. Many businesses are not ready to hire women for top positions. I often hear or I see, read in articles, they say, well, we just have to wait for, generations to retire. We don't want to wait. Why do we have to wait? Work flexibility is required, right? Family responsibilities get in the way of running a business. That's not true. We've all proven that. Look at your own career. Lack of confidence women have to even apply. That's something where, the WIC Network is really trying hard to provide training opportunities and coaching and mentoring for women to build up confidence in all levels of business. Lack of allies and a champion to help them navigate up. This is very true. We're trying to work with companies to say, please put formal mentorship programs in place. Please assign mentors and champions, to help women find the path up. Not being given the opportunity to show their ability to lead and take on larger roles. Again, the standards. There continues to be unconscious bias for women in leadership roles, right? We need to break that. We need to stop that. And women do not empower other women. Unfortunately, we still have some stories that exists, and we need to reach out and try to make change there. So without further ado, I want to ask my panelists, my esteemed colleagues and panelists, to put their cameras on, put their mics on, and we'll start with Cheeman. I'd love for everybody to just do a brief introduction, and then we'll get into the panel challenges. So Cheeman?
Hi, thank you so much. It's my honor to speak with the fantastic women of WIC and Women in Cloud at this unbelievable conference. I'm looking at the remarks, and such fantastic women. My name is Cheeman Bolin, and I am CEO of Paradigm Partners, a global company that leads companies to increase valuation through cloud IT, business, and digital marketing consultancy, or interim CMO, CTO, and COO roles. Prior, I was vice president of IBM, running a multi-billion-dollar P&L business, which includes software, SaaS, cloud computing solutions. And I have served in various C-suite roles at various growth companies, including Chief Marketing Officer, Chief Revenue Officer, and Interim CIO and CTO. On the board front, I'm currently serving on a public board, and the company is the leading IoT, artificial intelligence provider of safety solutions, as well as SaaS. and it was recently recognized as one of the top 500 fastest growing companies in North America. So I'm so happy to be elected to that board. And prior, I served on 4 public boards and 2 private company boards in the US, Canada, and Europe. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you, Chimin. Laura, would you like to go?
Yeah, can you guys hear me? Okay, great. I'm Laura Kamey. I'm really pleased to be here today and virtually meet all of you. I am the Chief Customer and Partner Officer at ServiceNow. ServiceNow is a enterprise software company, SaaS model that provides workflow technology to enterprises. So we just crossed the $100 billion market cap number in the past year. Before that, I was our Chief Strategy Officer, where I started in 2017, sort of really defining the strategy for the company, working with the board, the C-suite, et cetera. And then before that, I was a partner at Bain & Company, where I did all tech practice strategy, performance improvement, integration, M&A, all that kind of stuff for 17 years. I just joined my first board. It hasn't been announced publicly yet, so I guess I shouldn't say it. But it's a great pre-IPO. They're going to go out this summer. Tech company that I'm super excited about. So I guess there'll be a press release soon on that one. And I'm a mom of 3 young kids. So I have a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 4-year-old, and I also have a husband who works full time. So I certainly have stories about that for those of you who are struggling with that kind of balance. So anyway, very happy to be here.
I was typing some chats. Margaret, you want to go next?
Sure. Thank you so much. I love these intros. First, I just want to say I love being part of this event. Women in Cloud every year is a highlight of my year, and I'm very happy that Red Hat is also getting more involved in the Women in Tech Network. So thank you both for your collaboration, and I feel like Coco just kicked me in the butt and I need to join the Athena Alliance now. But my name is Margaret Dawson, and I'm currently the Chief Digital Officer at Red Hat. My tech career has spanned, let's say 25 years, we'll keep it at that. And it's been across a lot of areas: product management, product marketing. I've been a CMO and business leader at both startups and Fortune 500. I've been at Red Hat for about 6 years. The one thing that is consistent throughout my career is I've really maintained a focus and a passion on coaching, mentoring, especially around advancing women in technology, girls in STEM, and really overall diversity and inclusion. I have to admit, though, a board seat has not yet entered my background, and it's something I've thought about a lot the past few years. And if we have time, I'll tell a story with Coco about one interview I had with a woman who was trying to get more women on boards, and her advice was that we just needed to act and sound more like men in order to do that. So it'd be a great discussion to have. And I have 5 children, but they are all grown, and my husband is also in tech.
All right, welcome, Margaret.
Thank you.
Brandon.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brandon Lee. I'm the Consul General of Canada to the Pacific Northwest. And what that means is basically I'm Canada's ambassador to the region. So I oversee all the relationship from Canada to the Pacific Northwest and Alaska. Before this, I was Canada's ambassador to Silicon Valley. I'm a former tech entrepreneur that was brought into the government of Canada to help, as I say, disrupt the government from the inside. And for myself, I'd like to actually begin with a Canadian acknowledgement, a land acknowledgement. I'm addressing all of you from the Indigenous unceded territories of the Duwamish and Suquamish territories. And in Canada, so of course this discussion is extremely important. We've been looking at gender equity issues for many years, and I think this conference is an example of how far we've come. But there in Canada, we look at something called DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And for me, I think that is really the complete package of all the issues that we are looking at. So of course, racial diversity, gender equity, and inclusion for our LGBT and persons with disabilities. So I'll begin there. And for myself, because I'm appointed by the Prime Minister of Canada, so I represent him. So I apologize that Prime Minister Trudeau could not be here, and you have to settle for me. But one thing is, because of the conflict of interest, I can't sit currently on any boards, but I do advise many boards and many governments, municipal, provincial, state, and federal. And the business that we oversee here between Canada and the US is about $2 billion per day. So it's quite a lot of business and a lot of transactions that are happening. And I can't wait for the discussion. Thank you.
All right, Brandon, we're happy you're here. Okay, last but not least, we'd like to welcome our dear friend Kelly Nagel with Jabra.
Thank you so much, Christine, and thanks to this wonderful panel. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kelly Nagel, and I'll start with this, the mother of a 19-year-old son, the wife of my husband of 27 years and a daughter. And I'm also the president of Jabra North America, co-founder of the Jabra Women's Network, and also one of the chapter leads for the WIC Network Buffalo. As you can tell, I have a lot of spare time on my hands. I'm sure you're laughing. For those of you who are not familiar with Jabra, we are a global leader in audio and video devices, using one of those today. We are part of the GN group, and we've been connecting the world through the power of sound for 150 years. Not many companies can say they've been around for that long. You may know us from our brands like Jabra and Blue Parrot on the consumer and the enterprise side, but you also might not know that we also have a medical side with hearing. So we help people with hearing loss with bell tone and resound hearing aids. So I've been in the tech industry for over 25 years. After starting my career in hotel restaurant management, I thought one day I would be the general manager of the Hyatt Grand Cypress, because that was the first really nice hotel that I stayed in. And I thought I would be the GM. Well, after a few years of working in hotels, I'm sure you know, it's not as glamorous as it looks. So I dove into tech with Ingram Micro, where I started my career. And then I've been with Jabra for the last 5 years. So I'm really passionate about mentoring and sponsoring women and getting them to the next level of their career. So thank you, Christine and the WIC Network, for the opportunity to be here today.
Hey, so somebody just posted in the chat and said, we're only on introductions and this has already been amazing. And I know, right? The panelists are fantastic. So let's dive right into some conversation, and we'll give each of you about 2 minutes to really talk about your insights on how we might overcome some of the challenges that women face today. And I'd like to welcome you to, if someone speaks and you have, some feedback that you'd like to add in, please, by all means, let's try to provide as much commentary as we can for the audience. So let's start with you, Brandon. I'd like you to talk a little bit about the challenge that businesses are really not ready to hire women for top positions. What do you think about that?
Thank you very much, Christine. And if I could maybe have a running start, I think we're all on the same page on this. And for me, this is in a way the most challenging question because it takes a village. It takes all of us. It takes networking. And so a few things that I thought to share, and I'll just put out there is, we're going to get there, but networking, mentorship, so everything that Coco said, and just joining as many groups as possible, educate yourself, but then don't be afraid to ask the question. For myself, I'm actually the first visible minority appointed by Canada as a head of mission in the US to San Francisco and to Seattle here. So to ask, why are there not more people that look like me? Why, for myself and my team, every event, every reception that we put on, when I meet with VIPs, I ask when I see the guest list, who is the most senior woman we can invite to this meeting? We need more gender balance at this dinner. And just asking the questions consistently and constantly is very important. The final thing I thought is, let's not judge either. We need to bring on allies as much as we can, and everyone's own personal path. Everyone has a different story that they grew up with, their parents, their environment, their former colleagues. And so, if we all come from a place that we are all learning, we all have unconscious biases. And so not to judge, and just to take people as far as they can take us. But then finally, we are in charge of our own careers. There is no one else that is going to do this for us. So we need to be tenacious and confident and put ourselves out there.
Love it. And how you started off, I think ties to the International Women's Day theme this year, which is the Choose to Challenge. I think, that message is really getting out there, that we have to find a way to make our voices heard, that the status quo is not okay. So thank you for sharing that, Brandon. Our next challenge around workplace flexibility, and that family responsibilities do not leave time to run a business. I think we'll start with Kelly, since she started her introduction with her children and her husband and her family and the company and volunteer communities. So why don't you share with us why you think that's a myth and how we bust it?
Yeah, I also have a puppy. I forgot to add that. I have an 11-week-old puppy, which I'm trying to think this. But I'll say, I worked in an office for many years, for 19 years, and have been working remote for the last 7.5 of my career. And, I have to say our companies really embrace the work from anywhere philosophy, and more than half of our associates never go to an office. And those who do work in a hybrid setting. I mean, obviously COVID changed all of that and everyone was forced to work from home, but we quickly realized that associates were struggling to balance work, home, and the remote learning and caring for aging parents and children. And we made sure that families came first and gave them the flexibility to help their children with virtual learning, balancing home demands, and work isn't really sitting in front of your computer from 9 to 5. That myth is gone. And really helping people to create flexible schedules and the balance. And even one of my global management team members, he's got 2 small children and his wife is a fashion designer. And he said, well, I work from 6 until 10, and then I'm with the kids, and my wife works these hours, and then I jump on later. It's not about, you have to realize that this new work and this new normal that we're living in, you have to be flexible, and you have to support and let everyone just chip in the way that they can, and the work will get done, I promise. So I think it's being open to new ways of working.
That's great. Before we go to Laura to answer that, Margaret, did you want to jump on that?
I just wanted to add one point, because you kind of suggested it there, that this is not a woman issue. And I think one of the great things, about COVID is it's kind of introduced more equality, so to speak, of these family flexibility issues across all genders. And that's been somewhat of a bright spot from this. And I would say the men that work on my team are all doing the same thing and trying to set boundaries and have this more fluid or flexibility or, work, because we've become. And I think as women leaders, we especially can model that behavior and that flexibility for our teams. And I'm seeing it happen among, the teams that are led by women are becoming healthier. There's more compassion, there's more ability to do that. So I think there's a real opportunity there to use our strengths to model that, focus on joy and productivity and not butts and seats from 9 to 5.
Thank you for sharing that. Laura, what do you think about this topic?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Kelly, that's a good point. I mean, obviously, COVID-19 has changed the world dramatically. The statistics, though, about the disproportionate impact on women and people of color, though, I think are real and really staggering. I think it was September, there was a fact from the Center for American Progress that women left the workforce at 4 times the rate of men. And so I think we have to be really aware of that, and that women are bearing a disproportionate burden of work from home. I do think the point that there's now an awareness, and some of the third rails of like how work must be done are now being challenged in a way that I think is super healthy. And what I'm interested in is what are we going to do in the pandemic to support people? And there's a lot that we can do, but then, thinking about vaccines on the horizon, et cetera, what should we do to rethink how work is done going forward to make a healthier workplace that's more supportive? And so there's a lot of stuff around HR policies that we should be thinking about, HR training on virtual work, and how do we make sure we don't just return straight to the norm of 4 or 5 days a week in the office. And how do we give people visibility to that? It's actually great for people to be able to move during this, live in different places, be closer to, support networks, et cetera. Can we let people know that they can still have their jobs and permanently moved to the, neighborhood where their in-laws live or whatever? Those are important things that we can do from a policy perspective, making sure we offer part-time, leave of absence. Don't slow down vesting schedules during that, which we know would disproportionately economically impact women. So there's policy stuff. And then I think personally, as leaders and individuals, you talked about this too, Kelly. It's like normalize parenting. For me, there are these beautiful moments of humanity where my kids run in. I was another location where I work, I'm right by these like windows that go out in our backyard. And I was like on a call with the CIO of one of our big partners and customers, and my 4-year-old runs by like completely naked, and like, of course, and by the way, that is not the only time that happened. And these are just like amazing moments that you can kind of, I don't put virtual backgrounds on because I want my team and people I'm working with to like see that humanity. And the more we can kind of normalize parenting in real life and balance, I think that creates like a really nice moment for us to all, come together, feel connected, and also like help be a little bit more balanced and healthier and longer term. So
I love all of that. And I agree with you. In fact, so many people I've been speaking with, they all say how they enjoy that so much, that they get to see peek into the lives of people, and it isn't just an office behind them. It is their personality and their life, and we're getting to connect with people on a whole different level than we ever did before. So thank you for bringing all of that up. The next topic is the topic of confidence, and how women don't even have the confidence to apply. And I've been participating and volunteering with the Women in Technology movement for 8 years, and that has been a constant. So it runs throughout the whole problem. Not applying, not asking for raises, not negotiating. Gabriella, Schuster used to tell me that all of the positions that she had, the women would never negotiate a salary. The men, every single man would negotiate the salary. Not one woman that she had interviewed ever negotiated a salary, right? So, and it all comes from confidence. So, Margaret, we'll start with you. What can we do to start today and really make a push at changing this for the go forward?
Yeah, and you're right. I think this comes up in almost every mentoring or coaching situation that I'm in. And Brandon kind of touched on it a little bit, is that some of that confidence, is raising your hand. And I love when Coco gave the example of, I got VP because I asked for it. And the one thing I'm always saying is just ask for it. What's the that can happen? The answer is they could say no, but you're no worse off than you were, before you asked. And, we've all seen the data. And if you haven't, I think this is very true, is that, most men are taught to go for things even if they don't have full qualifications, right? And there's this kind of 50% mark that research has shown that men will go for a new job when they have 50 or 60% of the qualifications, whereas women are literally trying to check every single box in that list of qualifications on a job description. The thing I always focus on is we all have a core of about 50%. The way we do things, our competencies, our knowledge, our way of working, that is enough, honestly, for almost any job. And that other 50%, you can learn. And so the thing I try to work with women and men that I'm coaching is, what is that 50%? And how can you really get grounded in that? So you have that confidence to know you're a great people manager. You are, wonderful at working with customers. It doesn't matter what it is. And then be really clear. It's like, I'm a fast learner. I'm ready to jump in. And the example I'll give from my own career that really was a huge inflection point for me was when I was working at Microsoft, and I was working in what was then the security products division, which was a fairly new division at the time. And I had come to Microsoft because I had worked for a startup in a very specific network security space, and Microsoft had just acquired a small company in that same space, and no one really understood this technology very well. And I started in more of a traditional product marketing communications role. And my boss came to me and said, hey, we're having huge issues finding someone in product management and working with the engineering team to figure out the roadmap, figure out how to integrate this with our other parts of the portfolio in this area. Would you be willing to move over to product management? And I'll be honest, my first reaction at that time was like, I don't know how to do product management. I've never worked with engineers that closely. I've always been, more on this side. He's like, yeah, but you know this technology better than anyone. You know all the analysts, you know how it works, you know the secret sauce, you know the customers, why they're doing it. That's product management. And I was like, huh, okay. And the cool thing was, so I did it, I was terrified, but I found out actually going into that with that new perspective, but the foundation of what I knew made me very successful in that. And people never said, oh, well, you're not qualified for this. I never had anyone say that. So I think sometimes we need maybe someone to nudge us a little bit, but really focusing on what you bring that may be better, different, and that new perspective. And there are non-traditional paths to technical jobs all over the place. You don't have to have the computer science degree, as someone said earlier. So I think we all have to look for opportunities to help other women, move into those positions that they may not raise their hand for, or if one opens up, encourage them to raise their hand and let them know that why would you want a job where you're 100% qualified?
Right.
That's more, that's the job you have now.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's great. And I think that's where mentorship, having a mentor,
absolutely,
having a coach, really comes into play and is critical for us. Kelly, What are your thoughts on this one?
Well, I can tell you from where I am today that I wouldn't be in this position if someone didn't nudge me. I certainly would have never thought myself in this position today. And I, of course, thought, I'm going to be found out that I'm not qualified and I'm not the right person for the job. And I always tell people you need a sponsor and you need someone who sees more in you than you see in yourself. And surrounding yourself with an advisor, group of advisors that help you. And I've had some really amazing sponsors in my career. And one of them, Susan O'Sullivan, if you don't know her, she's the VP of Sales at Ingram Micro. She played a big part in my journey. And then my predecessor, Paul Hamnett, he pushed me into my next career step. And he said things to me, if not you, then who, Kelly? And I said, okay, you're right. It is me. And I took the step and I said, I'm going to probably swear holy blank when I got the job, and I buckled in. I told my husband, okay, I need your support, honey. You got to do the laundry now. I'm going to be traveling to Denmark. But I guess the point is you have to be bold. And I agree with Margaret. I have always asked, I've told people, I've walked up to people and say, I'm going to be your next sales director. I'm going to be your next VP. Yeah. And you own it and you say it and you're going to get there. So that's my advice. And what's the worst thing they say? No.
Right. That's right. I love it. Just ask.
Yeah.
All right, great. Well, we have 14 minutes left, so we're going to keep moving. This is great conversation. I love it. And actually, our next topic ties to what we were just talking about, and that is the lack of allies in a champion to help them navigate. So what is some advice that you would give? Cheeman, we'll start with you. What is some advice that you would give to women for, how to find somebody to be an ally or a champion for you?
Well, a couple of comments. Navigating to the top of the executive ranks to be a C-suite officer is not easy. Mm-hmm. To me, it's beyond mentoring, because your success is going to be determined by a lot of different factors. So we need to think about it, and we talked about it a little bit earlier. I think there's an opportunity for a lot of us women to rise up. We have a lot of transferable skills. We have the technical skills, but also us as women, we have a lot of soft skills. And as you rise up, the soft skills, how you lead your team, how you develop a culture, becomes even more important. So in my opinion, and if I look at my past career, you need to have a champion as well as a network of advocates. And what I'm talking about is peers, in your own organization, in your own company. We're talking about other industry leaders. I'm talking about levels above you as well as your employees. I'm talking about influencers. I'm talking about decision makers. What I've done in my own career is, since all of us are in technology and we know what a product roadmap is, consider yourself like a product and have a timetable. And then, as opposed to somebody nudging you, you have that nudge. Plus, you can look on the piece of paper that you have, is that, hey, I'm behind in getting achieved what I want to get achieved. And so what I do is I kind of put together what I call my 6-pack of supporters. Because when you get a job, more than likely, like for me, I don't call the people that you recommend. I call the people you don't recommend, to really get an insight, or the balance is more toward what I call backdoor referencing. So even during the process, for example, I serve as a CEO, I get a lot of 360-degree feedback for people who want to be in the C-suite, people who want to be director of cloud, etc. So those are some things to think about. Your network should consist of not only industry leaders, but also functional leaders. And what I'm looking for is not just mentoring, but somebody will be your advocate in all aspects, because you never know, and you never know when there's an opportunity. And if you have an advocate, they will actually share with you some of the opportunities that they hear about. And that's what we as women and men, don't forget the men and women alike, we need to have a network so there can be more of us in the C-suite.
Thank you. Laura, anything you want to add to that?
I mean, I think she hit it. In the interest of time, I think that's super important. The fact that it's well beyond mentorship, I think, is the key takeaway here, and that you have to actively ask for it and cultivate it. So I don't want to repeat anything.
We'll move on. Thank you. Okay, the next challenge is not being given the opportunity to show their ability to lead and take on larger roles. Brandon, you want to start with that one?
Oops.
Oh.
I think I pressed my mic button too many times. Okay. For this one, I think there are two things I'd like to share. One is you have to ask for clear performance metrics and performance measures. How can you prove that you are doing your job if you don't know what a win looks like? So for everyone that is in a function and you don't have performance metrics, I think it's very important to, even if your manager isn't clear on how to measure, build them together with your manager and get there so you can show that you are excellent at your job. And the second thing actually is, and it's been said many times, but you can lead now, starting now. For example, when I was a junior manager, I probably brought on more interns than anyone. So over the past 16 years, I've probably brought on in the triple digits of people. And even then, I've always made sure that it was as diverse a group of interns as possible. And now within the Canadian Foreign Ministry, I can say there's a whole cadre of diplomats, junior, mid, and senior level diplomats that I brought on. And so it's not, you don't have to wait until you're a C-suite to start implementing some of your vision. And also encouraging human resources to put into your job posters. We encourage women and people of color, Black and Indigenous colleagues, people with disabilities to apply. This goes a long way, I think. And even having that conversation with your HR counterparts helps change the entire organization as well.
Great, thank you. Chimin, anything to add to that?
Yeah, just a quick comment. I think it's very important when we want to rise to the top is make sure there's visibility in regards to our performance. I remember when I was working at 2 of the top Fortune companies, somebody said, okay, you need to go from director to senior director and keep on going and then vice president. I said, oh my gosh, by that time I'm going to be, I'm going to be 40 years old. I can't wait for that. And so therefore what I did is I figured out, because I look at how did the other guys get it, and they're only 34. right? And then I said, oh gosh, I'll be 44 or 42. And so what I did is I actually did a pivot. And I said, what's the best way to get visibility? So I actually went from being a tech geek to a sales side. And one of the best ways to advance your career is to be judged by quantifiable results. I remember the way I shifted from director all the way to a VP of a top Fortune company is when they showed this chart by region and by geography of all the sales results, the revenue, the profit, et cetera, without our names. And there were some new managers in there. And then I was able to skip it because what they're looking for is somebody who can deliver. And when the numbers don't lie, you stand on your own merits. You know, how fast you launch the product with no defects, what kind of annual recurring revenue for a SaaS model. So those are the kind of things we need to think about. We do not need to be sequential, director to senior director to senior director, etc. Because, you know, by that time, you know, we won't be on this earth anymore. So let's think about it. What are the best ways? Put together a game plan to get visibility around our performance. So not only you know about it and your husband, your kids are proud about it, other people in the organization, your company, and the industry can see it and grab you. It's better to be recruited as opposed to knocking on a bunch of doors, ladies.
Yeah, I mean, think between what you and Brandon both said, it's about ownership, right? And we all need to own our outcome for that. Yep. So I love it. I love it. Okay, two more left. Unconscious bias for women in leadership roles. Laura, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, maybe it doesn't stop even when you're in the C-suite. So let me start with a story. I was probably a year into my chief strategy officer role, and I went to a meeting with a partner, and I went with the chief revenue officer, David Schneider at the time, who and we were there to, you know, work through this deal and work on this partnership. So we got to the meeting, and the senior partner guy kind of arrived late in the room, and you know, we all stood up, and he proceeds to shake everybody's hand in the room, and then skips me and sits down and starts the meeting. And you know, we've all been through this kind of crap before, and so it's like, okay, fine, whatever, you know, we're late, let's get going, we got a lot of business to, and then I was like, well, maybe, you know, I wasn't like sitting at the right spot on the table, or I wasn't leaning forward enough, or I wasn't aggressive enough, but you know, it's like, whatever, we got work to do, let's move on. And David, to his credit, stopped the meeting and said, you know what, you missed Laura. She's the person that's driving this partnership. You know, she matters here, you know, and even on the plane ride home, we're sitting there like having a beer on the plane or whatever, David and I are debriefing on the day. And he brought it up again, was like, you know, I'm so sorry that happened to you. That really sucks. And it's just, to me, a great example of the fact that this happens throughout our careers. You know, it doesn't matter what level we're at, these kind of little, you know, I think of the Frida Kahlo, you know, image of like 1,000 cuts, kind of, you know, those kind of things happen throughout our careers. And that's why it's so critical to understand how these microaggressions and unconscious bias happen. And David had educated himself on that, but I think it's so critical that we're all educated on that, that we encourage our colleagues and our companies to educate folks on it, and that we're willing to call it out like David did, gently, you know, in a meeting, not in a aggressive way, but in a way that sort of recognizes it. You know, hey, you know, Margaret just made that point. I agree with you, you know, or what, you know, whatever the example is. So, you know, I think we'll probably all have our stories, and it's on us and on kind of everybody else to continue to get educated and to speak up and stop that kind of stuff.
Thank you for sharing. That's great. Brandon, what are your thoughts on that, and maybe even from a larger diversity perspective?
Yeah, with pleasure. And in fact, one thing, listening to Laura, your comments, one of my mentors told me actually an 80-20 rule, where I was trying really hard to do great work. And he's actually said, you're spending 100% of your time performing and doing great work. But he actually said 80-20 and spend 20% of your time letting senior management and others know of the great work you're doing. Because if you're just doing great work by yourself and nobody knows about it, then actually you won't get the recognition you need. So I think that's something that came to mind as I was listening to Laura, and I've put that into practice, and I think really it made a big difference in my career path, I can say. And then, Laura said it exactly right. I won't go further because I want to preserve our time together. But really, for me, this unconscious bias is to come from a position of humility and realize we all have unconscious bias, and we all have to work on things together. So, it kind of takes away a bit of the judgment of, but this person and he said that or she said that, out of it a little bit.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we're at time for our panel. We had one more topic to cover, challenge to cover, which is the idea that women do not empower other women. But we're going to Q&A. So while Karine starts to pull together some of those questions, I'll let Margaret just quickly cover that challenge and talk about what her advice is on that.
Yeah, this is one so near and dear to my heart. And I think a word that we need to put here is intentional, right? We all I think we're empowering each other, or we're empowering other women, but often it's good intent, but it's not actually showing up as intentional actions. And I would go back to the story that Laura is, how many of us have been in a meeting where a woman will say something, or someone that's maybe not of the same stature as leaders, and it will go unnoticed, or it will get completely moved away. And then 5 minutes later, someone else says it, and everyone's like, "Oh, that's a great idea," right? And I get that question probably every single conversation I have with other women, like, what do I do when this happens? And in a perfect world, you'd have an ally or an advocate, male or female, that says, "Oh, like Laura said, Margaret just mentioned that 5 minutes ago. I thought it was a great idea then, and I think it's a great idea now. Why don't the two of you partner and work together on that? Or if you have to advocate for yourself, do it. I love that idea. Maybe you missed when I just said that. Can we partner together?" Or whatever, without, the defensive,ness, which is, the first thing you want to say is, WTF, I literally just said that. Like, why are you bringing it up? So I think that's one, but really, it is being intentional. It's standing up when you see a woman being paid less. It's standing up and calling out bad behavior against, other people. And it's putting that, in a way that is very intentional. And unfortunately, sometimes women are our own worst enemies. We will pit, women against each other, or women will see another woman as a competitor when there is plenty of room for us all to rise up.
Yeah.
Right. And I'll just end with kind of building on what Brandon said. The word that I am using now in my own kind of intention setting, I guess, is empathy. Right. We have no idea why someone is showing up the way they're showing up, but we have to be able to draw on empathy and try to, know what it feels like to be in their shoes. And if you see someone's upset, instead of going to your immediate thought of like, why is she acting like such a whatever, why not saying, "Hey, it seems like you're upset. Can I help you with anything?" Or, what's going on? Or, and just moving the conversation from your assumptions and your unconscious biases, as Brandon said, and really doubling down on empathy.
I love that, Margaret. And you know what? This is a photo moment that all of us should raise our hand and say, "Choose to challenge." Let's do that. Let's get a photo here, team. Shimin. There we go. We got to choose to challenge those. We got to challenge ourselves and challenge others. So what a fabulous conversation. And it's not over yet. We've got a whole bunch of questions in our Q&A panel. And I'm going to start with one for you, Coco, because you're our keynote speaker. And it was the first question, and it's at the top with votes. So people want to know how do you know if you're qualified for a board? Do you have to be a CEO? Do you need to have years of P&L experience? Do you need to have people management? What are the three things that you would say that women, or men, but women, need to have or need to gain to be considered for a board position?
Yeah. So good news, it does not come down as much any longer to the exact title that you hold. It's really about experience. You do have to have enough experience to be able to relate to that realm, which is, it's a good idea to have experienced different parts of a business. So if you can create variety in your background, like Chi-Min has done, where you're moving to different parts of the business as you grow in your executive career, you do need to be in a realm of executive leadership where you've had overarching leadership over big portions of a business, but do you need to have P&L experience? No, I see lots of women joining boards that don't have P&L experience in that sort of traditional GM or business line owner or CEO type of function. I see them coming into the role from the chief marketing officer, the chief customer officer, the chief product officer. And I'm saying chiefs, but I see a lot of vice presidents as well. And it's not so much title as it is scale. So think about the scale that you've run. That's where it's, more relevant. And also don't get caught up in thinking about a narrow landscape. If you have been in an organization where you've driven as one of the key leaders $100 million of scale, then you can certainly fit to a company that's 5 million trying to get there, right? So think about scale. That's the big thing to think about. Think about variety of executive leadership experience and being able to have the conversations in that realm and practice, get used to knowing what they do in the C-suite and the boardroom so that you can speak the language. Those are the really important ways to think about it.
Great, thank you for sharing that. Okay, we've got another question that's rising up with the votes, and this is an interesting one. So I'd love to hear the panel's thoughts on how women are treated differently in organizations for ambition or just asking for more. And in this case, some people feel that they are being punished for the ask or the ambition of which men in the same organizations are being rewarded for. Who would like to take a stab at that question? Chi-Min?
Yeah, I think not so much now. I think in the past there has, when us as women ask for something that we deserve, and we, especially when we see others have received it of another gender, I think what we do need to be careful of, but not so much now, is our tone and how we do it. There's a lot of ways to get to point B as opposed to in your face. Now, what I've done is I've made sure when I ask for something, I know everything or as much as I can about that person. And then what I do is unconsciously, I kind of plant in the minds, if it's a guy, it says, how should I do this? Maybe I should somehow put it in the context of when I ask for something, maybe he'll think of his daughter who is graduating from college. So I always have to figure out, a good way, an effective way to ask for what I want and make sure I have commitment before I leave that conversation, that what I want, I will get in what I call, as opposed to somebody else, what I call a reasonable time frame. And we're not getting any younger, so maybe for all of us, our reasonable time frame should be more aggressive. We should seize opportunities, not just wait for them to come by.
Thank you very much. We've got so many questions and we're running out of time. So don't forget, you'll have an opportunity to address some of your questions for our mentors and our speakers in the networking session. But one final question that came up, and it was voted up top, are what other organizations, groups, networks, conferences do people participate in? What they recommend? Of course, you're here as part of Women in Cloud. The WIC Network, I would be remiss if we didn't say the WIC Network. We're global and we've got communities all over. Athena Alliance, doing great work for women on boards. International Women's Day is coming up on March 8th. And, women's organizations around the globe are planning fabulous events, and you'll have an opportunity to network and meet other amazing organizations. So search that out to find out. And then, a panelist, what other networks, organizations, conferences would you recommend for our audience to keep this conversation going? And that'll be our last question for the panel today.
Ada Lovelace, great conference and organization to look at.
Great.
always a great event to go
Oh, one of my favorite.
Oh yeah.
I love Women of the Channel.
I've never been, but I learned of Afrotech not long ago. And I think, you know, I planned to go pre-pandemic. Their last conference was in Oakland. I think that would be fantastic. We need to cross borders.
Great.
And for
Brendan?
me, it's not an actual conference, but I'd actually say reach out to your regional ambassadors and government officials, because we are asked all the time if we know leaders for boards. And I'm asked all the time, I'm looking for an expert in this or someone who can communicate to my board on this. And so the number of people I have on all my invites and conferences and events that I hold, you know, it's the channels that I leverage. So if there are any people in Seattle, please reach out to me and I'll make sure you're included in those discussions through the Canadian Consulate.
Great.
Yeah, I would say specific to boards also, piggybacking on Brandon there, you know, a lot of I would get to know venture capital teams, private equity teams. They're always looking for advisors, voice of the customer. I would get to know BDO, PwC, Deloitte. They're always being asked for referrals. They hold events. NACD holds an annual summit. If you're on a nonprofit board, you can join there. There's hundreds, actually, I would say thousands of board directors there. So there's lots of different places to go.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to participate in all sorts of groups of different diversity to bring these connections together. There's a woman in our network that runs a podcast called Bold Black Girls that's fabulous. And they've got like, I think 75 episodes now. And I just think it's fabulous. You know, it's not targeted at me, but as a supporter, it is targeted at me because I get to hear those stories.